Started. Quick introduction of myself. My name is Adam Kahansky, and I'm a senior account executive with Broadsign, and I'm based in Toronto, Canada. I've been with Broadsign for a couple of years, and my primary function with the company is working with ad agencies and buyers and marketers from kind of all aspects of the industry and introducing programmatic digital out-of-home to them. I have a bit of a unique perspective because programmatic is relatively new to the space. It's, I'd say, 3 or 4 years old. There's still a lot of education that's being done in the industry. So, you know, being in the place that I am, being with programmatic and at Broadsign, a lot of my time is spent really educating the industry. So it's, you know, it's a bit of a unique perspective that I'm hoping to share with you all today. So today we're going to talk about how impressions are measured in out-of-home. So over time, media owners have made tons of headway into successfully measuring the audiences who see their ad faces across the different environments where their screens live. More recently, innovation and technology has come to the forefront, with businesses being born and partnering with the industry to get even more granular and give us all a deeper understanding of the landscape and changing behaviors of the general public. But to start, I want to start off with a quote from Jim Pattison. For those who aren't familiar with Jim Pattison, Jim Pattison owns the Pattison Group and is a pioneer of out-of-home in Canada. Well, one might say that he was one of the, the guys who started out-of-home and large format billboard advertising in Canada. So, I mean, this is a variation of a quote like this that's been said many times, but I think it really resonates in so many ways right now. And on the grand scale, you know, if we take at some issues that are happening across the world, there's lots of social unrest in the United States right now, which is spread across the globe. The COVID-19 pandemic and how it has affected families and communities and economies. So two major world events that are taking place simultaneously that are, you know, asking for great change and moving forward in a positive way. But keeping on topic, even in our small world that is out of home, innovation has brought great change over the past few years, and that has allowed the channel to grow leaps and bounds. It's driving media owners to look at ways to implement data to the benefit of the buyer, and buyers are taking the opportunity to create a more omni-channel experience with new self-serve tools. So as more technology becomes available for buyers and sellers, the call for standardization and measurement has been at the forefront of the conversation for a while now. And with the introduction of programmatic into the fold, education on how audiences are measured is requested often as an influx of digital marketers begins to buy out-of-home media. From the buy side specifically, it's really important to strip down the simple definitions and methodologies that exist. For example, in online, when you load a page, ads are served in a one-to-one environment. So one ad served is typically one impression gained. In out-of-home, it's a little bit different. So you're serving an ad in a one-to-many environment. So like what we can see here in Times Square, brands are getting thousands of impressions with a single ad serve. And this may seem obvious to some, and maybe even many on this call. It isn't obvious to the everyday digital buyer. So what's an out-of-home impression? How is it different from the impressions that I'm buying online or on mobile? Simply put, an out-of-home impression is defined by the total number of times people are likely to notice an ad on an out-of-home display. Sounds pretty easy, right? Well, it's not that easy. Where it gets tricky is that out-of-home encompasses diverse environment types and various data sources. The methodology to measure traffic that drives by a roadside billboard is different from how it's done in places such as train stations. So let's dive in and look at ways traffic is measured in the outdoor space and how it has evolved. Traditionally, and still used as the foundation for measurement, are vehicular traffic counts. Media owners work with local municipalities and transport authorities to attribute the number of cars to a specific ad faces, which are counted as circulation. But today, there are many organizations around the world who are taking it a step further with varied data inputs. Household level population data is used to create profiles and compare to census information. Location and movement data that helps us understand how, why, and where people are traveling. And connecting trip paths to out-of-home screens. This all allows us to qualify exposure metrics like proximity, dwell time, and the likelihood to see an ad. With that, we can calculate the target audience and delivery for an ad unit, like composition, reach frequency, and impression delivery against each of the target audiences exposed. It's always safe to assume that cars driving in morning and afternoon rush hour are going to be majority single occupancy in a specific audience type. But with these advanced data inputs and in combination with mobile tech, we're able to identify audiences more closely. Mobile data, regional patterns, and trip purpose data now allows us to determine variable vehicle occupancy. The data collected tells us that on average, a trip that starts at home, then ends in a retail or entertainment environment is much more likely to have 2 or more people in the car than a trip from home to an office building. On top of that, media owners are partnering with companies that deploy AI on their screens with recognition technology to enforce a more deterministic information on the cars passing their screens. Another thing to consider is that vehicle usage patterns also vary by region. On average, areas with higher car ownership data tend to have fewer people per car. The speed of a vehicle when passing a billboard undoubtedly has an effect on the likelihood of someone seeing an ad. Of course, the faster you're going, the less dwell time is produced, which gives your odds of seeing a full loop on a screen much lower than 1 or 2 spots. But on the flip side, if you're crawling in traffic, then you're going to see a full loop, perhaps even 1 or 2 or 3. Great for advertisers and consumer ad recall, but maybe bad for one's patience and sanity. The illumination of an ad face is taken into account when it comes to measuring the effectiveness and viewability of an ad. The main question that stems from this is, how visible is the ad at sunrise, at sunset, or based on the location on that screen? We're on a small rock in a solar system spinning on an axis around a star affectionately known as the sun. So as you move along in a calendar year, where Earth is in its current rotation can affect how clearly that ad face is visible. So that means your location on Earth comes into play too. Where I'm located in Canada, the sun is setting at around 9 p.m. right now. Whereas in Sydney, Australia, the sun will more than likely be gone by the time you clock out of work today. And of course, that situation flips as both markets move into different seasons. While regarding what I just mentioned, the visibility when seeing an ad face in optimal view also asks a few questions. What's the angle to oncoming traffic? Is the screen on the left-hand side of the road, the right-hand side, or in the center median? Is the screen a parallel or perpendicular dimension? It almost seems overboard, but if anything, it shows you how important it is for the measurement in the space to be as accurate as possible and the commitment shown by publishers to give that sort of accuracy to the buying community. So we spend time focusing on roadside and the aspect of that measurement, but we can't forget about the millions of impressions we get from pedestrian traffic across the globe. Times Square, Piccadilly Circus, Shibuya Crossing, all massive hotspots in major cities that see hundreds of thousands of people flock to every year. Beyond that, bus or light rail stops and street-level screens throughout cities are the most popular ways to reach audiences in environments where they're not inside a vehicle. Today, media owners partner with top mobile app developers and data aggregators across the world to be able to dig deeper to see the patterns of a walking audience. Weather, navigation, social media, fitness are some of the key categories of app usage that are tapped into. Also, factors such as employment density, walking speed, business locations, and much more are taken into account when measuring this important channel, many of which are also used when discovering patterns in the indoor, place-based side of the business. Outdoor media typically gets the most of the attention when it comes to the glamour that's attached to the out-of-home industry, but place-based media is so important to include in the mix, as we all know. Touchpoints to reach consumers are nearly everywhere along the daily journey, and audience metrics and their methodologies are as diverse as the screen placements themselves. With so many different types of environments available in the indoor space, media owners partner with the facilitators of these spaces to get traffic counts to ensure the best possible estimates of how many people see the screens. So even with technology in place, a tried, tested, and true way of collecting audience data still exists in an analog type of way. Work is done with transit commissions to get relevant turnstile information, office towers to get data on the number of businesses that occupy their floors, restaurants and bars are called for receipt data to get an idea of daily patronage, and so on. So we have these analog methods of audience measurement collection as the baseline, but let's break down some of the currencies that are placed side by side with them. So as a publisher, I now have relevant venue level data from audiences frequenting the physical space that I own. Now I need to qualify that audience against screens that I have in place. So to do that, first we take a look at presence. Presence just means physically being present in the venue of which the screen exists, which we can attribute to my last slide. Next is the screen and exposure zone. So the location of where the ad format is in clear view represents that exposure zone. This is also commonly known as a viewshed. So imagine an outward facing triangle, and once people walk into this triangle, they're in the area where they have the best opportunity to see the screen. The dwell time means the length of someone that is inside that screen exposure zone. Dwell times can differ depending on the environment of where the screen is too. So let's take, for example, if I'm sitting at an airport gate, odds are I'm sitting there for a good 30 to 60 minutes. Whereas if I'm on the subway platform, maybe I get lucky and it's only 60 seconds. So the variation of dwell time are vastly different from the different places where the screens exist. And then of course, view. Simply put, it's someone looking at the screen while the ad is displayed. So you're probably thinking, yeah, this makes total sense. I'm a buyer or I'm a publisher, and we have these conversations about this sort of thing all the time. But coming from the buying perspective, what about when I'm using one of the many self-serve tools that are out there and buy from multiple publishers at once? Will I be able to effectively run a campaign using all of these publishers in one self-serve reporting dashboard? Enter programmatic. There had to be a way to unify all this unique measurement data so that buyers could transact in the digital out-of-home space. And the idea of offering digital out-of-home programmatically was to bring the day-to-day digital trader into a world they maybe hadn't been before. The experience had to be as seamless as possible. When this way of transacting on digital ads started happening about 10 years ago, the original promise of programmatic was designed to do a couple things. First, it was designed to allow publishers to expose and monetize their valuable inventory to a market where dollars were being transacted in the billions. And then secondly, it was to give advertisers who were in control of those budgets the ability to vastly grow their reach and tap into audiences wherever they lived online, using cookies, data, and tools to do it themselves. I won't hide the fact that the aforementioned promise has been used and abused over time. I think we've all seen the images of a warehouse packed with servers and thousands of smartphones set up to add millions of fraudulent click-throughs into the ecosystem. Obviously, it's crazy. I think they call them click farms. But the good thing to come out of this is that as a community, digital out-of-home has been able to enter this arena, learning from the mistakes of the past and maintain that legacy of trust that has been built over decades with buyers. The biggest signal being the new bespoke digital out-of-home DSPs available to marketers built to uphold that trust, and the open and transparent partnerships on display with media owners across the world. It really resonates with the community when companies like Clear Channel, Lamar, Pattison, Outfront, Astral, and so on publicly announce their foray into the programmatic space and their partnership with DSPs and SSPs. So as I mentioned, replication of the buying experience for advertisers was important. So to do that, the industry needed to standardize. The impression multiplier came into effect as a way to streamline planning and reporting the way impressions were distributed. Because DSPs are meant to aggregate inventory sources into one easy-to-use interface, the diversity of inventory and the way audience data was collected presented a challenge. If I'm a buyer and I'm adopting new technology, I need this done and universally accepted by all of the partners I plan on buying my inventory from. So here's how we do it. First, traffic data. Yes, that timeless and ever-important traffic data is collected by publishers. So again, even with new methods in place, it's still the cornerstone of the multiplier methodology. Then we take the dwell time because, as I mentioned, we know that standing on an elevator or in an office tower or at an airport gate will be different than the time they spend standing on a train platform. Then there's the loop length. Some publishers post content for the audience that isn't advertising at all. There's news updates, public service announcements, last night's sports scores, etc. This metric comes into the mix as well. And to bring back to my point about replicating the buying experience, publishers have become flexible with their loop lengths. This has allowed digital agencies to easily repurpose creative they may have already used in the online or social media spaces. Accepting varying creative durations has really opened the door for advertisers to get into the digital out-of-home space who may have seen barriers previously. If I'm a buyer and I can use my TikTok creative in a grocery store and it's relevant and makes sense, then that is awesome. The combination of these four pillars gives us the ability to define and deploy the multiplier to help pave the road for the future of digital out-of-home measurement. Mobile audience data is another key pillar introduced with programmatic digital out-of-home. Some media owners may have already had this as a part of their product suite, but with the self-serve platform, mobile tech partners are now giving buyers the ability to select mobile audiences and find them across the entire out-of-home marketplace without bias, just like they can online. So partnering mobile tech companies are drawing polygons around the view sheds or physical venues where screens exist to capture data from people's mobile devices that are found within them. This is giving us an incredible look at who's seeing the ad faces and allowing us to continue with the relationship with the audience after they've been exposed to ads. Integral in this is the SDK data, short for software development kits. SDKs are lines of code found within apps that expose users' behaviors, allowing buyers the ability to paint a picture of who is seeing their ads. You can really learn a lot about a person if you look through the apps on their phone. For pre-campaign planning, buyers can qualify out-of-home faces at scale. Based on the specific type of consumer that they want to target, this is done based on finding that specific audience type in concentration using look-back windows. This is a huge boon for media owners too, who may not have typically been on a national or regional campaign because their environment isn't a quote-unquote fit. But if the mobile data tells us that we're finding heaps of outdoor enthusiasts in places like a health clinic or convenience stores, then you bet I'm putting my Patagonia or North Face budget there. What has made mobile so important amongst buyers is the ability to look at the movement of their prospective audience. Adding out-of-home into the mix makes things like adding attribution as a KPI to your out-of-home buy accessible. Having tracked device IDs found in a polygon during an ad exposure allows us to attribute a conversion to a space that they were not able to before. Using my last example, how powerful would it be to serve ads environments you'd never think about serving your ads, then track your audience into a retailer where your product is sold? So, attribution, the holy grail in ad buying. The idea of being able to track a conversion when serving an ad is ultra important to marketers. For almost its entire existence, out-of-home has been a brand play in reaching audiences at scale. But with modern technology and the cohesion that mobile brings, this has opened the floodgates and brought a different conversation to the channel. Mobile retargeting is probably the most common and most simple tactic being used when leveraging mobile with your out-of-home campaign. We already know that effective out-of-home ads drive immense search traffic for brands, but strategic retargeting can really keep that conversation with an audience going well beyond seeing the ad at their bus stop or walking through the concourse at their local shopping mall. Whether it's standard display, pre-roll video, or activating those exposed devices on social media, out-of-home is being used incredibly well in being that launching pad for the path to purchase. The ability for any business with a storefront to measure whether their potential customer was exposed to an ad is so valuable in deciding where to place their ad budget. Programmatic platforms give marketers a great opportunity to monitor foot traffic and optimize their campaigns if they see which screens seem to be driving more people into their stores. Again, this goes back to trusting the strength of data because it's finding your core audience in concentration versus what maybe your old plan was, which was hitting a reach frequency goal. With brand identity and how it's perceived being so important today, perhaps more than ever, the ability to serve an ad throughout the marketplace and run engagement surveys to those exposed consumers on their mobile devices in an intimate way provides great insights for brands and their buying teams alike. We all know how a strong out-of-home creative can make an impact on its audience, and brand lift studies are a great way to attribute to mood or feelings surrounding their message. So I've spoken about technology that's been deployed in markets across the world, but what's really going on behind the scenes? There are a handful of renowned organizations who offer their services to publishers to allow them to gather and analyze audience insights in a really impactful way. Earlier, I went on about getting traffic data. I mentioned analog a few times, but I didn't actually tell you how it was being done. You'd probably notice if there was a person at the side of the road hanging out under a billboard with a clicker counter, but it's not like that. What it is like is that there are state-of-the-art cameras installed that allow for a more robust qualification of the audience once they enter that exposure zone. Detection of the speed of a vehicle, type of vehicle, occupancy, and in combination with mobile data is really moving us as an industry to new heights, all to the benefit of the marketing community. The tech is so detailed that common demographic data, time spent viewing, and even the emotion of an individual can be detected. But of course, as we dig our heels in further and further to the nuances of detection, privacy will always be a concern. But I do have to stress that publishers who deploy this technology make all of their insights and anonymity their top priority, and will always make sure the proper protocols are followed. We don't know, and we'll never know, if it's President Donald Trump driving a Toyota with DC plates down the highway, but what we will know is it's a male in a higher age bracket driving that Toyota. So with that insight, if I'm Ford and I'm Honda, I want to know this data, and I want to deploy it in my campaign. So like every other media channel across the industry, there are multiple groups that exist to assist buyers and sellers in ensuring that audience data presented is accurate based on the methods used in an unbiased way. Not only are these associations and companies assisting with verification, but they're also helping in the growth and innovation of those methodologies so that the out-of-home industry continues to ask itself questions, improve, and offer the best products available. So of course, I had to give a shout out to some of the well-known associations across the globe that are doing this great work in the industry. So if you're a buyer on this call and you're based in the United States, the United Kingdom, Canada, or the Netherlands, you probably have heard or worked closely with these organizations. If you're from somewhere else in the world, you definitely have one of these types of organizations of your very own. So I've spoken a lot about the great things we're doing and have done in the out-of-home industry, but we're no doubt experiencing tough times. We've been the highest scoring media channel over the last few years, and it seemed no one could say anything bad about out-of-home. But then, boom, COVID-19 spreads across the globe, slowly but surely, and has taken the wind out of our sails in many ways. But like in every aspect of life, there are challenges that we're experiencing and that we'll have to address as a community. And like any other channel where advertisers are placing their ad dollars, out-of-home isn't perfect either. So let's look at some challenges. Okay, so the elephant in the room, as I mentioned, COVID-19, it saw a dramatic reduction in traffic in public spaces. Doctors, health officials, and anyone else with something to say were telling us to stay home to prevent the spread of the virus. And as a society, thankfully, we listened. But with that said, no one was expecting the full force of what was to come. As a media channel whose value is in the free movement of populations who are out and about and spending money, we saw that value almost disappear at the blink of an eye. Unfortunately, what this exposed was the reliance on historical data gathering to provide traffic estimates to advertisers. How quickly and how effectively were we able to assign that data, and as accurately as possible? Some might say it may not have mattered in this unique case, which I would probably agree, but there certainly has been some exploration into how this could be done at scale with efficiency and accuracy. But in lieu of that, many media owners did an immense service to the advertising community by conducting their own research studies to update us on week-over-week traffic, which I certainly applaud, and I think that will also create a legacy in itself. One ask I always get from traders is if the impression data presented to them is done in real time. The short answer is no. We've done excellent work as an industry to advance the out-of-home channel and make it available to the next-gen media buyer, but this won't be an easy fix. There are media owners out there who use cameras, Wi-Fi signals, Bluetooth sensors, facial detection, and other interesting and impressive tactics to narrow down this data as much as possible. But the thing is, it's really expensive, which means it's really hard to scale. So of course, elements of privacy also have to be taken into account as the rules change from country to country, state to state, region to region. The good thing is that there has been great commitment shown in the industry, and it's not a matter of if it will happen, but when. And I don't think it's going to happen overnight. I think it's going to be a gradual move towards this, which we're seeing right now. With the use of mobile data to segment the marketplace for buyers, we've done great work in mirroring programmatic digital out-of-home to look like a digital buy in the planning and execution phase. Where the challenge lies is that no mobile tech company actually has 100% of the audience in a region. You can certainly make probabilistic assumptions given how we know the technology to be, but that's always something that we'll have to consider when planning your out-of-home campaign and combining it with mobile tactics. Spill will naturally happen, and that's something that we've come to accept as a community. But at least now it's going to happen much less given the tools that we have at our disposal and that we are continuing to create. So if I could bring it back to that quote from Jim Pattison, with challenges comes great opportunity. And given how many remarkable people I've met in my decade in the ad industry, I know that the out-of-home space will continue to not just grow, but certainly thrive as we get through these past few months and get back to normal life, whatever that is. So that's my presentation. I yield my time. Thank you very much, everyone.